Okay, Michael, adult child, feeling the nervousness, a little bit of butterflies, and I'll start with the adult child. I am just grateful to be able to call myself an adult child. You know, when I first came in here, I didn't know what to make of that term. Um, but I quickly realized like the truth of it. Like I had been living life, really from the perspective of a child and not knowing that, trying to be an adult, but still stuck, in my childhood, really. Like the developmental needs weren't met. And I was just making it up as I was going. I was pretending and failed miserably. And, hopefully, I'll have time to get into that, what brought me here. But, before I say anything, I want to make sure that, you know, I let people know that this program does work. I mean, it is a miracle. I came in and I gave myself to this program and it hasn't let me down yet. It is my higher power. It is a loving parent to me and it is teaching me what unconditional love is and how to love myself and how to show up for myself. And so I give all the credit to ACA. I just do the freaking work. Like I just do the work and I don't stop doing the work because I lived in a nightmare before I came here. Um, so I'll just start with, I'm gonna do it in three phases. If it all works out well, it'll be like what it was like growing up. Just a little bit on that. Try not to spend too much time with that and get bogged down. Then I want to share what I was like as a result, in my adulthood, in my teenage years as a child. And then recovery. I definitely want to talk about recovery. So yeah, I grew up in a family that, as I look back, it was bad. It was terrible, in fact. There wasn't any sexual abuse or physical abuse, but that's all there was. Like there was no connection. Both of my parents had personality disorders. Neither one of them knew how to connect. And, of course, as a child who came in, uh, just hardwired for connection to like have parents that loved and wanted him around. It was brutal. I mean, my trauma is really attachment trauma. I was also the scapegoat. I mean, there was a lot of hostility leveled at me, a lot of blaming me for everybody else's, problems. And that is the trauma too, without question. But as I look back, like the trauma that is really still affecting me is that attachment trauma, that, inability to connect to people who, biologically I was created to connect with. I mean, I don't think there's a greater I carry terror. I've carried terror and I still have terror within me. And I lived in terror. I lived in shame. I was malignantly shamed and I had just intense shame to the point where, I was turning red. I was sweating. My vision would go out. My skin felt like it was burning. Um, it was it was remarkable how how much those things were a part of my life and how as an adult I was able to compensate but not really thrive at all. I definitely was in survival mode, as we talk about with the laundry list and the other laundry list. And I was living from that place. It's interesting. There was a time when I came in where I would have probably spent so much of the time talking about my parents because I was fucking enraged. I fucking hated them, guys. And I hope you can hear that. Like it was venomous, just eternal hatred for these people. And, and I hated myself for being like that. But as I look back, I can see clearly how that came to be, how I actually remember cultivating this hatred within me towards them because every attempt to connect to them brought hostility, brought humiliation, brought betrayal, brought a sense that I was bad for wanting connection, and I didn't know any of that. I was just a child. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know my mother was a sociopath. I did not know my father was a narcissist. I couldn't know. And so I went to these people who couldn't connect and, and hated me for the attempt to connect. Really, they were just projecting their own shame and self-hatred onto me. But I took it, this is how I took it, is my attempts to love somebody is harming them, and there's something wrong with me. And, I have this need, this intense desire to love. But, when I do, the people I try to love really turn on me. And like my dad, I can remember telling him I love him, and he'd be like, "What do you want? What the fuck do you want?" Like, oh my God, like, whoa. And, when I look back, and I think I'll leave it at this, there's two fond memories I have. One is my mother, kind of caressing my ear as a child when I was going to sleep. And it happened, I think, just one time, but it was so, unbelievable that I was being touched by my mother, that I was being caressed, that there was this, comfort being given to me, that it was seared into my memory. Like like I remember it like I was there. And, and the other fond memory I have, and this is legitimate. Like, I don't have fond memories of them at all. My other fond memory is hugging my dad's arm, and it was such like an amazing feeling. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but as I look back, he was passed out. Like, he wasn't hugging back. He just wasn't pushing me away. And so, I remember that, and just like hugging his arm, and just so like, you know, so I went into adulthood not knowing that I had never been touched. I knew I hated them. And I knew there was something really bad about these people. I remember going, my mom is evil. She's evil. Now I know that, yeah, it's not necessary. It's not that. It's like she doesn't have what she doesn't have. She doesn't have the capacity to even connect at all. Whereas my dad does a little bit, it's not like great, and he's dead now, but and it was superficial, and it was he was charismatic, but it was not, there was no depth to that connection, but I did feel like there was a connection. And so I went into my teenage years is when I noticed something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was me, and I blamed me mercilessly. I blamed me. My inner critic got really loud. Um, but I didn't have any tools. I didn't know what was missing. And and this is what it hurts it's okay now. I mean, I'm in ACA, and it couldn't have been any other way. Like that phrase right there is a lifesaver. It could not have been any other way. I couldn't have turned out any other way. You know, in fact, on some levels, I might be a miracle. Like, how much I do have to offer this world. But yeah, I just, the first place where I noticed something was off was dating. I couldn't. I didn't have any kind of, uh, at 25, I was invited into like a threesome, and I, I couldn't initiate anything. I couldn't ask a girl out. And so at 14, I'm trying to ask a girl out, and I couldn't. Like, it went from nervousness to just intense terror, just intense fear of rejection, intense sense that I was bad and wrong and wanting to have a relationship with this person other than kind of superficial friendly, which was how I related to my parents, was inherently wrong. And I didn't know that. I didn't see that in me, but that's what I've come to see through ACA, through IFS. A lot of people here would talk about internal family systems. It's just remarkable for getting down to the nitty gritty. And I can see that young, me 14, it just wanting like somebody, wanting this girl, but not believing that that's okay. Like, because going to my mother, I mean, she hated me when I wanted her. Like, this is that simple. So I internalize that is like, there's something wrong with my love. There's something wrong with me wanting to love. And of course, I was watching the whole world do it, but I'm being driven by this subconscious that I developed in my family of origin, and that went on to like 20. I up till 25, it was just a string of me, befriending women, wanting to ask them out, not being able to ask them out, and it became like a thing for me where I felt really weird. I felt inferior. I already felt inferior, but now I felt really inferior because I had failed in my family of origin. I was obviously, just this pariah, and I'm, just a terrible like thing, and I shouldn't exist. And then I'm trying to find like a measuring stick that I add up to. And so society offers you relationships, like how many relationships you have as a man in a young age is like, or if you have one, like just whatever. I didn't have any. And, just intense shame, a feeling of being really weird, something wrong with me. And, really gratefully, somebody invited me into this three-way at 25, and it changed everything. Like, suddenly, just because I had experienced sex, I was comfortable now kind of like initiating. And I still didn't date though, guys. I still did not date. I didn't, I mean, to compensate, I was an addict and an alcoholic. And those words are, I don't know. For me, they don't really work, but they get the point across. I don't really believe in that anymore, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the ACA message. So, but yes, to get rid of that pain, I went head first into drugs. So with no abandon. I didn't care. Like, I didn't want to feel this disgusting and repulsive and rejectable and useless. And, I didn't want to feel any of that anymore. So I just got high and I stayed high. And, to kind of like, like I remember when I got into, and I was really struck by the truth of this statement. I was going into, like I had finally like found something that worked instead of the drugs, and so I wanted to get off them. I had found a medication that worked and really numbed me, and I had spent my adult life numb as a result. And um, I'm grateful I don't have to take those anymore or be numb like that, but I did, and I wanted to get off the drugs and alcohol. And I they kept asking me like, what did you use? When did you use? Da, da, da. And I was like, look, I used anything, anytime, anywhere. That was just it. I stayed high and I was good at it. Um, so so there you go. I still didn't have any skills for life, guys. Here I'm 28 years old, and I basically spent my 20s hanging out with a bunch of people like me, not learning anything about life, and suddenly being offered a medication that allowed me to try life. And so I still didn't know how to date. And I was 28. I had gotten clean and sober, and I was working as a cook. Very, if I was working, I wasn't opposed to work. I just like just got high all day and didn't need to. But when I did work, it was menial. It was cook. dishwasher, construction, just I had no sense of my worth, no sense that I could do anything else. And I was blushing. I was turning red. I was having emotional dysregulation, and I didn't know what the word was until I found Pete Walker, Surviving to Thriving. So I'm emotionally dysregulated most of the day. I'm having emotional flashbacks most of the day. And, so really, even I didn't know my worth, but I would try. And so I would go be like, a cashier, and, uh, and then I would get dysregulated. Something would happen. Somebody would show up and, either behave in a way that sent me into emotional flashback back to time of childhood where, basically emotional flashback is you're flooded with emotions. You are, I just wrote this down for somebody else. Flooded. There's like a sense of being small. There's eternity thinking. Like I've always been bad. I've always felt bad. I will always feel bad. There's like no. It's just this is it. It's so concrete. And and just yeah, just emotional dysregulation, too many emotions. So yeah, that would happen. I didn't know what that was. I mean, I just struggled through. I just found a way to like I didn't want people to see it. That was my only goal. Don't see this. Like whatever this is, and that we didn't have the we just didn't have it back then. There was nothing. Like there was no trauma. ACA is remarkable. I think ACA is far beyond most of like the mental health field. As far as trauma, they're catching up quick. But like, ACA doesn't joke around. ACA talks about, feeling shame to the point where the walls are coming in and you kind of lose your vision, or, a love deficit on Holocaust proportions. Wow. Does that ever hit? Like, you know, whoever said that, whoever told me that I had a, a love deficit on Holocaust proportions. And yet when I read it, I know immediately that that's it. Like there was no love. I don't know how to love, is what I soon realized. When I came here, I was like, I totally believe, and I think I had a strain of thought, but like, whatever, we're going here now. So I'm surprised they kept it so, in order before. But yeah, like the laundry list talks about how you know anybody living from the laundry list can't experience love. I think that's how they put it. And of course, you read that, and I was a very loving person. I was a very kind and loving, and yet it's true. Like I didn't know how to love. I didn't know what love was. I knew what codependency was. I knew and I didn't know it was a codependent, by the way. I read the book like in my 30s. I read Codependent No More, and I was like, eh, maybe some, maybe a little, who knows? But I couldn't identify until I came to ACA and read the Big Red Book. I love this book, by the way, guys. Big Red Book. If you haven't read it, it's definitely uh top of my list. And it talks about to be an adult child is to be a codependent. And somewhere at 6 months, that kicked in, and I just had this moment, this revelation. I was like, holy fuck, I'm a codependent. And I had already been talking to my sponsor from NA. He's here. Hey, Pete. Sorry, broke his anonymity. Oh, so sorry. Um, and I'd already said, like, you know, like drugs are a problem, but people are my problem. He knew my story, and I still didn't know. He helped me to get here. He helped me to believe that I could seek out what was good for me, and that he would still be there for me, that I didn't have to do things in a rigid manner, that he wanted me to find that, all he wanted for me was to find love inside. And he didn't use those words, but like, that place inside that guides you, like that really loving place inside that knows what's best for you. Like that's all he was trying to do, is help me get there. And, I do find that I'm there, much more than I ever was, and much more than I thought it could be. Like I follow that voice, and it's guiding me, and it's like, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Like, I don't know where I'm going, guys. I'm like on a journey following this, and I don't know where it's going to end. I just know that I keep showing up and doing the work. Like, I keep showing up and doing the work, man. And the work scares me. The work is not easy. The work is, for me, is doing what I was taught never to do, um, which is turn to my emotions, because I grew up in a family that hated emotions, didn't have them. one parent didn't have emotions, the other one hated them, and and I was taught to manipulate manipulate everything to control their emotions, because they didn't even know they had them. Like, my mom, again, didn't like, she could maybe get angry, but my father would have all these big emotions, but he couldn't even see it. So I had to manipulate them, and that's part of the codependency, is not knowing that emotions are okay. So, I've learned to turn to my emotions, um, and and again, I lost my train of thought, because I'm having powerful emotions, but I think I was saying something about like what ACA is for me, and what this journey is. Yeah, what this journey is a journey inwards, and it's a journey to feeling my emotions and not running from them, and embracing them, and knowing that all emotions are welcome, they're all allowed, they all are there for a good reason, and that that if I turn towards them and I spend time with them, I'll see why they're there. And some of them are there because of uh you know cognitive distortions, because I have this developmental trauma, and developmental needs weren't met, but there's nothing wrong with the emotion. Like, I just have this habituated stance that I have to get away from my emotions at all costs and go to my head. I have to not feel, don't feel, just go to your head, be okay, be a people pleaser, be happy, don't feel. And in order to get in touch with my emotions, I don't have it here, but I use the feelings wheel a lot. And to get in touch with my child, my inner child, I would journal on an emotion, and with, just kind of freely journaling on the emotion, with the idea of, like, I wanted to know, where did I first experience this emotion, or where was the emotion not experienced, and it would always bring me back to my childhood. It would always bring me back to this really powerful place where I got to know my inner child, and I saw his pain. So, you know, emotions are just, I don't know how far we can get in ACA if we're don't go to our emotions. Like, and I didn't even know how. I didn't want to. But this whole thing with ACA just kind of gets you there. And now that I'm here, I'm finding that behind the terror is this warm place of love, that I've never experienced. And this just happened recently, like this terror, this kick in the stomach that I live with every day. I live with a kick in the stomach that flares up to a terror in the chest, and then it goes to like a shame, whole body shame. I'm running from that. And I found some people outside of ACA, therapists, and other people who are healers, and one of these healers has helped me sit with the emotions. And I would sit, and it was like intolerable. Oh, like I didn't want to sit with them at all. And but I kept learning how to sit with them. And then I just found out on the other end, it was just warmth and love in there. And it was my inner child, he is just, he's just expressing his abandonment, and I was running from him. And, that was torture for every, for the whole system inside, again, IFS, internal family systems. Um, so, when I got here, guys, I'll go back to that. When I got here, I was a mess. I was truly a mess. It was terrible. I, um, I had gotten divorced for the second time. I had become somebody I didn't know. I married somebody very similar to my mother, and I had watched her children, who were 4 and 6, watch the profound neglect. They never got touched. They never got held. She would hide from them, in the closet, and it was bad, but that was normal for me. So I married her, and, I, I set out to rescue. I put on the cape, and I was going to rescue these two kids, and I was going to help her be the person she always wanted to be. And I'm the enlightened one, and really I'm like big into Eckhart Tolle, the four agreements. And I just found like a real steady source of amphetamine. And I just thought I was something. And so I go in there, and I surprisingly did a lot of good. Like I really did love those children. And I remember Brandon coming out of being just so the, he just had no sense of worth. He had no sense that he had anything to offer. I imagine he'll be the scapegoat. I'm not able to see them anymore. We got divorced after 4 years, and that was super painful. But yeah, I was able to offer some things, but you can't offer what you don't have. And I certainly didn't know how to help them with their emotions, because I hadn't worked with any of my emotions. I won't spend too much time with that, because I'll kind of get depressed and full of self-pity, I suspect. But, the marriage ended. She divorced me. I wasn't allowed to see the kids anymore. And I was destroyed. Um, and, and it was like, it was 5 years. I couldn't get right again. I couldn't right the ship. I didn't have anything. I had given life my very best. I had put everything out there on the table, and I failed. Like that's what the conclusion I kept coming to. Because part of that was the codependency, where, like really nobody was there for me in my friendship circle that I had. And, I had this like fantasy that, through this people pleasing, that I was going to have this wonderful circle of friends that were going to be there for me when I needed, but I'm rigidly self-reliant and I won't let them help me. But, that day comes, they'll be there. And they weren't. And the two people closest to me that I called friends actually took advantage of me. That combined with this, with my second divorce and me giving everything I had and not being able to rescue these children, becoming somebody I had never thought I would. I was really living a lot from the other laundry list. I primarily lived from the laundry list, but I was living from the other laundry list, and had become a bully. I had become somebody that was dangerous to the people around me, and I had intense shame, and I didn't know how to make that all better, because I didn't have any language from that I have now with ACA, and it was just more of that self blame that I was so accustomed to. If life isn't working, blame myself, shame myself, kick myself to get better, and that was like that seemed legit, guys. Like I didn't have a sense of love. I didn't have a sense that when I have failed is when I need love the most. When I have failed is when I need grace the most. Like I didn't even, that wasn't even in me. Like it wasn't even something I could draw from. ACA gave me that. So, so yeah, that was like 5 years of the most intense, self-hatred, shame. I felt like I had an elephant on my chest. I was terrified of myself and I was terrified of the world. I was finally terrified of the world. I'd always been scared of everybody. I'd always been scared of everybody, but now I was in terror of everybody. Everybody was, in fact, a threat. And still some of that's in me, like a little bit. This is like doesn't go away that quick, 3 years in recovery, and it's it's mostly gone. I would say I'm going to say 90% gone, but it's still back there and it needs some work. But yeah, and that's how I was living, for 8 years, like most of 8 years, because a lot of my recovery, so 5 years, and then I found ACA, and then I embarked on like the journey of my life where I just put everything into recovery. Everything I had, morning, day, and night, every thought I had was recovery. Everything, recovery, 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 recovery. And that was actually not hard for me because the alternative was not going to happen. I wasn't going to go back to the place where I was waking up, hitting myself in the head to the point where I had like bumps, screaming at whatever God is there for allowing me to wake up again and having only one future for myself that involved a shotgun. Like that's all I could see. It was so vivid. And this part of me wanted me to do that. Like that's all it wanted. And it was so loud. It was like, it would just show me pictures of me doing this, ending it all. And, and I couldn't like, and I was just one day I realized like there was a part of me that wouldn't give up. So my ACA journey kind of started before ACA with the inner child, but I didn't know it. This part of me wouldn't give up. And, um, and I was like, and I was mad, I was screaming for it to give up. But at some point I realized like, here we are, but 5 years in, and nothing's changing. Nothing's going to get better. I can't, the only solution I have, I can't do it because this part of me won't give up. And, my journey really did start right there because I turned towards that part of me and I said, my God, if you're not going to give up, then I need to fight for you, you know? And, I started fighting for this part. Um, for now, what I see is my inner child, that place of purity and wholeness and, just love for life. And I'm grateful for that part now. I am so grateful because life is getting good and I'm loving life. And, you know, um, there was never a time in my life where I would invite people to see me speak. If I did speak in another 12 step, I would not invite people because I I compartmentalized everything in my life, including people. And I was a different person for every person and every group of people. And my greatest fear was that all of the people I knew would come together and I couldn't be all of these different people for that was like a real fear. And and then I had a friend who really wonderful person. She she had invited her family, her adult children, her coworkers, her 12-step people, her neighbors to her house for a party. And she was the same person with all of them. I was like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, what is that? Like, I was floored, guys. I'm like seeing a person who is the exact same with everybody, comfortable in their own skin, and I wanted it. I couldn't have it, and or so I thought until ACA. And now it is it is a big part of my recovery to remain authentic in who I am. And if I have to get away from people who trigger this intense need to be something I'm not, then I do. and that's okay for me because there are a lot of people out there who I don't have it all figured out yet, but I just it gets my inner child gets scared, my inner teen gets scared, and we just desperately want to be somebody we're not so that we can have perceived safety. And it doesn't work. And I know that, but to know it and to feel it and do it really are two different things. So, I stay away from people that trigger, and it simultaneously really work to strengthen what I have and to increase it and to be more myself. Like I just went to the eye doctor today and I was myself with everybody I met. I didn't put on a persona and it felt good. I felt safe in my skin. It felt like I was allowed to live and I remember driving home and thinking like, oh, two of those, it was like a lot of people there working. I was like, oh, two of those ladies were really doing what I did. I could tell like they were living through a persona, not through who they were. And that, I get no judgment there, but I know that place of living through a persona instead of living from, you know, from your center. And recently, because I'm living from my center, I'm starting to this is so recent. I'm starting to see myself as an adult. So I'm going through life, da, 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 and I'm going, holy shit, people see me as 52 fucking years old. That means that when they see me, they see a man. And they see a man who's 52. And with that comes, I don't have to pick up those responsibilities. I don't have to do anything that isn't me, but it does come with, something if I care to, it just does. Like there's just, it's seen and so my point is, regardless of that, like that's not all figured out and thought out. My self-reference is a child and a very deformed, defective, repulsive child at that. Like that has been what I show up to every relationship with, to every group, to everything like is and it's like on one level, I know I'm like have become an adult, like I have an adult body, but this thing is this self reference of being this disgusting and repulsive, worthless, child is just so strong that, my greatest desire is that you never see that ever, like never ever. So, you talk about putting on a show, horse and pony show for everybody. And I look back, guys, and I'm like, it must have, for some people, it had to have been disgusting to be a part of that. Like, oh, for a lot of people, I drew them in with it. So whatever. But for some people who were living authentically, yeah, because I can remember people like just I can see, because we're hyper vigilant when we come. We're super hyper. We notice everything. Like, as ACAs, I can remember people just wanting to get away from me really quick, and I suspect those were some very authentic people who could see like that I was just living from a persona. But yeah, I don't have to do that today, don't want to do that today. And when I do when I do feel like I have to, I get the fuck away from those people. And because this journey is really important to me. Lately, the journey is leading me into gentleness, kindness, and tenderness and innocence. Like that is the place I'm going. Like that's what I offer myself. I do not, I do not pick up the old measuring stick of being Billy Badass and, like revenge and having power over people. Like I'm giving that up to get to this place because this is the journey. I don't know why. I don't know why we're going this way, but I sense real healing. Like what did I not get when I was growing up? I certainly wasn't allowed to be innocent at all. I didn't get tenderness. I didn't get kindness. I didn't get gentleness. So I'm giving that to myself. That part of me is awakened and it needs that. And, I need to be the one to give it to this part of me. And I'm doing it. And, it's remarkable to now be able to live from this place where I'm showing up for myself. I'm making decisions that suit me that likely wouldn't be understood by most people. And I don't care. I don't give a shit. This is what's good for me. I live my entire life pleasing everybody. Like I didn't have a sense of any internal direction. I didn't have a sense of worth. I didn't have a sense of value. I didn't have a sense that what I needed or wanted was allowed, that I was allowed to have boundaries, that I was allowed to keep myself safe. I didn't know that. So I people pleased and I looked to everybody else as the authority on Michael. And now I have become the authority. On my inner child. And, I don't think I spoke about the inner child, but the inner child work is what got me away from that place of suicide, that place of intense rage and hate for myself. I knew I would cry. ACA said you have an inner child, and I believed them. And I immediately set out to find my inner child. And, and when I did, he was feral. He was feral. He had knives. I'm not kidding. I know this is in the big red book. Somebody else has had this experience. My inner child wanted to cut people. He wanted to cut me. And not only did I have this feral inner child, but I had internalized my parents who refused to allow self-compassion, refused to allow any type of love to enter my system. So me and ACA embarked on a journey to find my inner child, and I would push past that place using all the tools of ACA. I would just be like, it's okay. I didn't deserve it. That wasn't right. It wasn't my fault. All of these, and I would just let the inner child know all this, and I would push past this very, very powerful part of me that did not want me to give that little child love. And so here I'm trying to love a little kid who wants to cut me, going through a part of me that hates compassion, and doing it with ACA, doing it with Christina Neff, selfcompassion.org really helped. Doing it with Wu Wei Wisdom, WUWIE Wisdom. This guy, David and Alex on YouTube, he told me I'm creating these emotions. Another way you could say is my inner child's creating these emotions. But it's not, my emotions are not being created because of what other people do outside of me. And that was news to me. Because when you did something, I had a fucking emotion and it was big and I took it personally and I needed to change you. But what I found out is, people can do things, and based on my belief system, based on my core beliefs of who I am, I will create an emotion within myself that reflects what I believe, their actions mean to me. And, like if somebody could be a real asshole, and I know that there are people who don't take it personally, who don't get ashamed, who don't get small, who will say stuff like, well, they're having a bad day, or, da 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 da, which used to drive me crazy. I'm like, having a bad day, like somebody just got anger around me and I'm terrified and, I'm taking it personal and I'm, creating the story in my mind about, how bad they are. Like, so, I had to learn about emotions that way. I also had to like figure out that I had two types of emotions. I had the emotions that come from living life, emotions like people die and I'm going to have an emotional response. People, you know, life unfolds and there will be an emotional response and that's okay, and still I'm creating it, but there's an emotional response. We're all going to have it. or most of us. But then there's the emotions I create through my story. And these are the ones that were killing me. Um, I, um, I was creating my own emotions through my story. And and what that looks like is, a genuine, real, emotion that comes from living life is, comes from, it lasts 90 seconds. It just blows me away. I was having emotions that didn't stop, and I mean that, like, at all. I was waking up to these emotions and I was going to bed to these emotions. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I was having these emotions. I couldn't stop these emotions. It was a story in my head, guys. I was just thinking, triggering these emotions, triggering these beliefs inside of me, triggering these cognitive distortions. One of them was fairness. I'm going to have to wrap it up. I know they wanted me to but cognitive distortions are huge. And the core beliefs we have about ourselves. So if we believe that we're worthless, or that we're powerless, or that we're defective, or that we're unlovable, you know these are, they rule. They are, like, but then there's the cognitive distortions of life isn't fair. I didn't even know I had that. I didn't know, like, I would have told you, yeah, life isn't fair. Because I was trained to say that. Because when I really did express my real belief that life should be fair, adults around me would criticize me, or, people I worked with. Well, life is not fair. It's never meant to be fair. It's organic. It's nature. As soon as I got out of the mind identity, the ego structure, this thing that I had created, and I looked to nature, I go, there's no fairness in it. It's just organic. Whatever created nature created me, and it's organic, and it happens, and it's not personal. And that really started to help me. But I was ripped from that particular cognitive distortion, and it hurt tremendously. And somehow my sponsor helped me get there. I don't know what we were doing, but it led to this, and I had a choice. I got to end it at this, but if there's one, and I made the choice. And if there's one thing that has really become clear above and beyond everything I've said and things that I forgot to say, is that this entire process, along with listening to that voice, it's about choice points. It's all choices. Am I going to choose to walk out and feel the discomfort and the pain that comes with that, and do something different? Or am I going to, by default, choose to remain in my dysfunctional thinking? Because there is no in between for me. There's no wonderful, safe in between for me. That went away with my bottom. I couldn't even hide out my own brain. It was terrifying. Like, my own thinking triggered terror. Just fantasy thinking, like, just thinking about, maybe dating somebody, or being a CEO or whatever. It would trigger this critic who's like, who the fuck do you think you are? And I couldn't even hide out on my fantasies. So, so that might be the neutral place in the middle, is hiding out in our fantasies. But I didn't have that anymore. I can't go back to where it came from. And I had to start making choices, little choices. And I don't know why that's making me tear up, but I'm still doing it every day. I'm making little choices. And, I'm now, I've been a truck driver my entire life because I just couldn't, guys. I couldn't with people. Like, they terrify me. I'm blushing. So I've been hiding out in a truck, and now, like, it looks like I'm going to be an IFS practitioner, and I'm going to be working with people. And because I'm already, went through school and I did it. And, you know, it, it's just amazing. I'm like, how did I get there from here? And it was just embracing the process and making choices that are better for me. So I love all of you. I'm just grateful you're here. And if anybody is afraid that they're too far gone to get better, this is not true. This is not true. We can all get better. And this program allows it. So thank you so much.